Wait, you have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV. Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hey everybody, welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, as always, your TV Guidance Counselor, here to talk about classic television using back issues of TV Guide magazine from my personal collection as the gateway into our collective past. This is an extra episode this week, a little bonus episode. You may recall when lockdown started and sort of every week thereafter, which has been a lot of weeks, I asked you who you want to have on the show, who you want me to talk to, and you've given me some great suggestions. Some have already been on, some will be on. There's a little bit of mystery for you. Some just told me no and to leave them alone. But one person who didn't tell me to leave them alone was Gigi Garner. You may know her as James Garner's daughter. She runs an amazing animal rescue called jgarf.org, jamesgarnerarf.org. Pretty easy to remember. We talk about that here. We talk about her short-lived acting career, but she had a billion other more fascinating jobs after that. Just a really great person, super nice, had great stories, and I really love talking to her. So I think you'll enjoy this extra episode of TV Guidance Counselor. Sometimes I get to talk to more than one person in a week, and you reap the benefits. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Gigi Garner.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Gigi Garner, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's raining here, which it'd be nice if I could somehow get this, ship it over to you.
Well, that would be nice because there's no oxygen here.
Yes, that is very stifling and not fun. You grew up in Los Angeles, right?
I did. I'm from LA, but I've lived in a lot of different countries, areas of this country, and all over the place. Yeah,
I remember you saying you, and we'll get to it in more detail in a moment, but you were a private investigator, a licensed private investigator in Tennessee?
I was, and you can insert your Rockford Files joke there.
And then did you live in the UK or in Europe for a bit as well?
I did. I lived in England. I was a recording artist there, and I had a couple records out. I've done a few things.
You did a little bit of acting, correct?
Very little.
Yeah, but that wasn't you didn't want to go in your dad's footsteps to that degree.
Not at all, because I have no talent, and so that would be difficult.
Well, you clearly have talents. They may not be in the acting area, but they're in other areas there.
Well, I don't suppose anything that I've ever done or ever will do will be as great as what my dad has done, and that's okay with me. I'm very proud of my dad.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that most people I know who are sort of second generation showbiz kids, whether they feel like it or not, is they either have completely no interest in it because it's what their parents did and that's kind of boring, or they're like, well, my parent was great, so I'm never going to be that, so I'm going to do something else that's me.
Yeah.
You were sort of a teenager when he was in, I guess you'd call it the sort of second big phase of his career, maybe even the third, which was Rockford Files. So he'd done Maverick in the 50s, and then I think before you were born or when you were very small, so you wouldn't have been aware of that. But I mean, Rockford was an enormous show, so that you must have been aware of how popular and revered your dad was at the time.
You know, it's funny, but I really wasn't, and I wasn't really paying attention because when you're a kid and you're a teenager, you're just doing your own thing. You're not really concerned about what your parents are doing. But I will tell you that one time my car was in the shop and I had to drive my dad's work car to school, meaning the Gold Firebird. And I parked it down the street from my school because I was so embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to see it.
I mean, it's funny because it's the one place you probably could have driven it and kids wouldn't have batted an eyelash.
Perhaps. Yeah. Well, they probably would have looked down on me because it wasn't like a BMW or something.
Right. But, look at that old car.
Embarrassing.
Did you
Your dad's work car.
Yes, exactly. It's not like it's an ice cream van or something, although kids might enjoy that.
No.
Were you watching the stuff he was in, or is that something you maybe did later in life, or did you watch it when it was on?
I never really watched it when it was on, but I was there a lot when he was making it.
Right.
So I was like a production assistant for a while during the summer. My dad made me work. And I really did enjoy being there and going on location or going to the studio or whatever. I enjoyed it. I was an extra a couple of times, walking in the background there. But, I mean, as far as watching it, no, I don't think I've ever watched it, to be honest with you. But I'm glad other people are watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's probably hard for you to get lost in the story when it's your dad and you were probably on the set seeing how the sausage was made.
Probably. I've never really watched my dad much. I'll see it on TV or whatever, but I wouldn't, go watch something that he was in just because he's my dad. He's not a cartoon character to me or some other character. He's just my dad. So I don't really look at him as the scrounger, let's say.
Right.
Although he really was a scrounger when he was in the Army. And it's so ironic that he played that character in The Great Escape. And then when he was in the Korean War, he was actually doing all that stuff that the scrounger did in The Great Escape.
He got a Purple Heart or 2 Purple Hearts, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did.
That's one of the things that I always talk about on this show and that I'm sort of amazed by is your dad's generation of actors lived a life before they acted. And you could see that on screen. Yeah.
Well, he didn't become an actor until he was like 30.
Yeah.
So he had like 75 odd jobs before he became an actor. So it's kind of, he had a life, yes.
It reads on screen. I mean, you can tell this person has life experiences and things they're bringing to a role rather than just always having been an actor. There's a personality there, and I think that's probably one of the things you get a lot from people who talk to you about your dad, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
So even sort of nostalgically, you don't ever throw an episode on or like almost like home movies or anything like that?
No, I really don't. But you know what I noticed, and a friend of mine pointed this out, is that one time after my dad passed away, which he passed away in 2014, about a year or two later or something, I was at a film festival with some friends in Sonoma, and they were going to play one of my dad's movies. And I said, because I had to sit there and watch it, and I thought, this is going to be awkward. It's the first time. I turned to my friend, I said, this is the first time I'm going to be seeing my dad,
since he passed,
on screen since he passed away. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? He said, you're so lucky. He said, my dad passed away 20 years ago, and I don't have any film of him.
Yeah.
He said, you can see your dad anytime you want to. And after that, I zipped it.
Still feel the same way, but you just don't complain about it.
Right. I didn't complain about it anymore because he had a really good point.
Were you watching anything at that time, or were you into any shows, or were you just kind of like, well, that's my dad's work. It's Hollywood. It's...
Oh, gosh. I know you're the TV guide guy.
Yes.
So is that why you're asking me?
Yeah, well, I was also going to ask you because, I always wonder if it's like, hey, Dad, I'm really into David Cassidy. Think you could introduce me? Like that kind of stuff,
Yes. I was going to say the Partridge Family. That's what I was going to say.
I guessed wrong.
No, I wouldn't ask my dad to do that because that would probably be too much.
Horribly embarrassing.
It would be anything that had David Cassidy or Bobby Sherman.
Right.
Any shows. Those would be shows I'd be watching. And I didn't really understand like why people were so interested in my dad when I was a kid. But I really understand it and appreciate it now.
Right.
But I really didn't then. It took a while.
Was there a moment or something that flipped that for you when you started to appreciate it, or did it just kind of over time sort of slowly become something you appreciated?
I think over time it just gradually dawned on me. And I think I'm a late bloomer, so it did take me a while to figure out that why people wouldn't leave us alone while we were eating our meals, or people were constantly waving and
right.
Hey Jim, I was like, as a child, you just don't, it doesn't really register. Nobody sat me down and said, Daddy's famous.
Right.
It just I had to figure it out on my own.
Well, also,
later.
I mean, it's the only thing you know, so you have nothing to compare it to. So obviously it's going to sound normal.
Exactly. People ask me all the time, what's it like being James Garner's daughter? And I said, I don't know, because I don't know anything else.
Right. I've never been anyone else's.
Exactly. It's great. It's great. He was a great father. And even more than that, he was the greatest person. I've heard so many stories about my dad, about all these wonderful things he did for people, and he never told anybody about them. He just did it.
Yeah, I mean, a good friend of mine said, charity doesn't count if you tell people. It's kind of like you just do it to do it. And which leads me to what you're doing now, because you started a dog rescue sort of as a tribute to your dad in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, I've been a rescuer for 30 years, and it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my dad's legacy. And so last year, I started a 501c3 charity called the James Garner Animal Rescue Fund, which I call JGARF, and it's jgarf.org. What I do is I don't rescue the animals myself anymore, although I have a plethora of rescues at my home. I work with other rescues all around the world. I help with vet bills or food bills or transportation, lodging. I try to fill in the gaps wherever people need. I have quite a lot of animal people that follow me on Twitter. It's at MavrocksGirl on Twitter. It's Gigi and James Garner. And so I do a lot of rescue through Twitter and social media like that. I've done everything from seeing a picture of puppies in an alley in Thailand and having them flown over and adopted out of California. I've done all kinds of things. I mostly try to concentrate on death row animals. The overpopulation situation has gotten so that there are hundreds of thousands of animals who are being killed just because there's no home for them. Mm-hmm. So it's spay and neuter, spay and neuter, spay and neuter. So I started this foundation in his honor to carry on his legacy, and hopefully people will take a look at jgarf.org and see what I do.
Yeah, it's people listen to the show all over the world, but in where I am in New England, I always have to emphasize to people about kill shelters, because not only do we not have any here, but we also have no stray dogs here. So all of our dogs are shipped in. It's actually very difficult to adopt a dog here because everyone wants one. And when you go to the shelter, it's like Black Friday. Like people are sitting in their cars waiting for the dogs to come in.
Well, I have a bunch of dogs. If anybody wants to contact me on Twitter, I have a ton of dogs lined up for you.
So I was going to say, even if locally it's like it is here, like there are plenty out there in the rest of the country.
And I can transport. I work with a pilot who will transport. So I will make sure you get a dog if you need one. Let me know.
I'd take more.
Because I've got a long, long, long list of them that need homes right now. Otherwise, they're going to be murdered for no reason. So, I mean, it's very important. There are a couple of states around the U.S. that have a shortage, like Washington State and a couple other places. But there's such a backup in certain areas like Texas, like New York, and places like that. There's really a problem. And there are kill shelters, just they don't have space and no one adopts them, and they're perfectly good, beautiful, innocent, loving animals. And it's really a tragedy.
Yeah,
so I want to bring a lot of attention to that, and I also want to save them. So you're welcome to contact me on Twitter at MavrocksGirl.
Did you have dogs growing up, or did he always have a dog?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Always had dogs. Always. And my dad even rescued dogs. He found, he was in the desert, he was trying to quit smoking because he was getting ready to do a non-smoking product commercial. And so he and his best friend went out and parked in the middle of the desert where they couldn't get to any cigarettes. And so he could quit smoking. And this little puppy came up from out of nowhere right to the doorstep of his motorhome, and he just snatched him up, took him home, named him Nicotine. And he was known as Nicky. And, my dad was a huge dog lover. Huge.
Did it work? Was he able to quit smoking with Nicky?
Yeah, he did. He quit smoking. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
He started smoking when he was 12. So,
I mean, but that was what, in the late 30s?
Early 30s. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the my dad was born in 1928, so yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine anyone being a kid in the 30s. I just picture everyone being like, wearing a full suit and smoking anyway, even like, if they're older than 6. So
yeah.
So that's not that unusual.
It was a thing. People didn't know it could kill you, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at old movies and stuff, there's doctors looking at x-rays with a cigarette in their mouth. I mean,
that's so healthy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, looking at old TV guides, especially, there's a ton of cigarette ads in them. And they really are like, this is the healthiest cigarette around. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, different time.
Yeah.
But your dad he endorsed a bunch of product. He was in a few different ad campaigns, right?
He was. He did Polaroid. You may remember Polaroid with Mariette Hartley.
That was probably the biggest one, I think, because it was for years, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Years and years. And he also did Mazda. And he did a bunch of other things. So, but he was a great spokesperson. People, for whatever reason, really gravitated to whatever product he was endorsing. But he made sure it was something that he really believed in first, before he did, speak up for them.
So did you have to drive Mazdas and like always take Polaroids?
Yeah.
I
actually did a Mazda commercial with my dad, and I ended up getting a Mazda.
Oh, wow.
For that.
Oh, I think I've seen that ad. You were like a teenager, right?
Yeah.
I have seen that ad. Ish, yeah.
It's one where I screech off.
Yes.
I screech off in the driveway. He's got a very funny look on his face.
Because he also bought race car. He was a race car enthusiast as well, right?
Yes. He wanted to do the film Grand Prix, and so he went to Bob Bondurant School of Performance Driving and learned how to be a driver, a professional driver, and he did all the driving in Grand Prix himself, plus the stunts. And then he ended up owning his own racing team and went on and came in second in Baja 1000 and all kinds of things.
Did you travel to those events with him, or did you hear about it sort of from him later? Yeah.
Oh, no. I went to the races with him all the time. And I was there when they were actually filming Grand Prix at Brands Hatch in England. He actually put me in his lap and took me around the track in the Formula car that he drove in that film.
But
not fast.
Okay, I was going to say, how terrifying was that? So it seemed terrifying.
It wasn't. He's not going to take me 100 and something miles an hour. No. Also, it was very cramped in there. My dad's a huge person, and those race cars were very slim, and they had to take literally everything out of the race car. He was practically sitting on the asphalt almost because they had to make room for him.
Unusually for an actor, he was a big guy. Most times they're, actors look bigger on screen, and then you see him in person and you're like, oh, it's a very tiny person.
Right. No, he was a big guy.
Yeah, he sort of, he embodied the sort of persona he had on screen, really, sort of physically, and that's unusual. Normally it's a disappointment, I think, which is probably, again, why people were always saying hello or talking to him, because he probably came across in person just like he did on screen, which is not always the case.
I think, my dad just had a certain, charisma.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And he just exuded it everywhere. So perhaps.
Because I think
perhaps.
he started his career in commercials, right? Or modeling, because someone encouraged him to, because they recognized that sort of charisma he had.
I think so, yeah. He started as a model, and he really hated modeling a lot.
I can't imagine him being a model and being super happy about it.
He wasn't. He never took himself very seriously either. He never felt like he was some Hollywood star or something. He came from Norman, Oklahoma, and he never forgot where he came from. He was very down to earth, and he never forgot it.
So do you think that's why you are so grounded and have like you're obviously not a Hollywood kid.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I always, I'm an adult now, but
right.
I wouldn't say I was always like this. It's just, I've tried to be respectful of my dad's. I know that whatever I do is going to reflect on him. So I tried to be respectful of that.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, that's...
at least.
Yes, yeah. At a minimum, trying to do that. Where was the first place you moved to after growing up in LA? Did you move to Europe first, or were you in Tennessee first?
Oh, I went to Europe first. I lived there for 4 years, and then I moved to Tennessee, and I was a staff songwriter at a record company for many, many years. And I was a staff songwriter at Word Records, and I ended up writing a couple of #1 songs
no
for
big
that
deal.
company. Well, not really. They weren't country songs. They were Christian songs.
Right.
And I've done, just a few other things. I think I'm like jack of all trades, master of none. I just kind of do something and reach a modicum of success and move on to the next thing. Probably ADD.
Summed up what I do as well.
Okay, so we both have ADD.
I've had 0 #1 hits in any genre, so that is you're already winning.
There's still time. You're young.
There is still time. But did you watch like the show Nashville or anything like that recently and kind of compare it to your experience?
I did not.
No interest at all.
I'm terrible with the TV show thing. I know you're trying desperately to tie it in.
No, not at all.
I'm not too good. I'm not too good with that. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. I'm just curious for someone
apologies.
like so few people have had those actual experiences. I'm always curious to see how they, how they compare to the way they're presented to people. So that's why I ask.
I know the person that created the show is the director of, if I'm not mistaken, I hope I'm not mistaken, Ya Sisterhood.
Oh, yes. I believe you are correct.
And so I'm, very interested in her work, but no,
you get other stuff going on.
I was there for, how many years was I there? 16 years.
Wow.
In Nashville. Yeah.
That's a very different town than Los Angeles.
It is. But you know what? I've never regretted leaving LA. In fact, I'd love to leave LA right now.
Well, yeah, there's other reasons to
Yeah.
But I imagine that, it's a very different lifestyle and kind of a nice change of pace in somewhere like that, while still being sort of interesting in a happening town with, an entertainment industry of its own, although a different one.
It's different. It's much different. I mean, I was in the industry a little bit for 8 years. I had my own talent management company here because I felt like there were a lot of actors who were being overlooked, and I worked really hard for them. And then I just decided I need to do something else because I can't babysit adults anymore.
You're not the only person I've heard that from. Similar stories. It's like banging your head against the wall after a while, I imagine. Where
a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. It was very tough, but you know what? I really learned a lot, and I'm glad I did it.
So you produced some stuff too, didn't you?
I worked a little bit in production. It's such a difficult time to raise money. And I've had a couple of projects, but wow, it's just not a good time. So I am taking over my dad's production company, Cherokee Productions, but it remains to be seen what I do with it, if anything, at this point, because it's just, there's no production at the moment. So it's a little bit, embarrassing because there's
nothing.
Production is shut down. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I do anything.
Well, the industry, so in addition to that, is kind of shifting and in this weird sort of in-between stage as well. So, I imagine you kind of want to sit and wait for the dust to settle, literally in some cases.
Literally.
Before you could even develop a plan.
It's just a different time. It's just a different time, Everything is different now. 2020.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Totally different.
Yeah. It's for better or worse, but mostly for worse.
Right.
What are some ways that you would want people to remember your dad the most? Like, are there, you haven't necessarily watched a lot of the stuff he did, but were there roles he was the most proud of, or things that you think are the most representative of what he did and who he was?
Well, I can repeat what he said, which is, first of all, his favorite film that he ever did was with Julie Andrews, called The Americanization of Emily, which is a very interesting film, I think from 1964. That was his favorite project. He loved Patty Chayefsky, and he liked the content. He liked the message. He always said that was his favorite project. But he always said he would like people to remember him with a smile. So, my dad had this sort of smirky kind of comedy look, and I think that would be easy for people to remember him with a smile.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just watch the first 10 seconds of the credits of Rockford Files, and you kind of have it already. But it's interesting because he got a bunch of nominations for stuff, but kind of not until way later in life. Like, I think 86 was probably the first time, because he got an Oscar nomination, right?
He got an Oscar nomination for Murphy's Romance with Sally Field. Unfortunately, he didn't win, but yeah, he had a few awards, but you know what? He never took the award situation very seriously either.
Right.
Like, a lot of people were offering him awards for this and that and this and that, and he was like, "No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, thank you."
Someone else
he just wasn't into the award part of it. What he was really into was going to work. He was the first one there, sometimes the last to leave. I mean, he loved working, and he loved being the leader of his crew and his cast. And, he was a producer on Rockford Files, so that was his, baby. But everything he worked on, people looked to him like he was the leader, and he was. He took that role very seriously.
Yeah, it's sort of, in some respects, you're born into it when you have that sort of natural charisma, but you sort of have to grow into that role as well, which it sounds like he did.
Mm-hmm. He did.
What did he say to you when you got your private investigator license?
He said, "You're out of your mind, and I'm not okay with this, and I want you to quit right away."
What made you do that?
Insanity. It's not quite as glamorous as it looks like on TV.
No.
And I just thought it would be something fun for me to do, and I was wrong.
Yeah,
It was not fun. It was really difficult, and it was very dangerous, and I didn't do it for that long, and it was just something I did on a whim.
You got to learn yourself that it's yeah. I mean, I'm such a film noir fan that when I was in college, I took private investigator classes as well to get certified. And then I was like, oh, this is just sitting in cars trying to get pictures of people on disability lifting things, or like, people cheating on their spouse.
Actually, what I did was really dangerous. It was like, I put myself in situations that I would normally never ordinarily be in. Like, I'd be in smoky bars or, things like that. But what I was doing is I was trying to catch dirty cops,
oh, wow.
dirty judges, dirty DAs. It was just, I would be in a hotel room and there would be a camera and a lamp, and the sheriff's department would be next door. I mean, it wasn't safe. And I was trained, but not trained well enough.
Yeah, you're not
to
superhuman.
be doing something that dangerous.
You're not superhuman.
I don't know what I was thinking, but my dad was miserable.
Well, that's what dads do. They don't
really
want you,
upset.
They don't want you in a dangerous position, for sure.
No.
You see, like, move back here and we'll get you a TV series where you do all these things. But it's much safer.
Too bad I can't act. Oh, well.
Oh, a lot of people have TV series who can't act. That's stopped.
No, that's true.
Never stopped some people, so there's no reason.
That's true. Good point.
Was your dad the kind of person who kept memorabilia or kept souvenirs from things that he did?
He did. He did keep some things. He wasn't like a lot of actors like steal like wardrobe and, you know, stuff like that. He did keep some things. After he passed, I went in and took everything out of his office, and I found a bunch of treasures. But he didn't keep a lot, but he did keep some.
Right. So it sounds like the stuff he did keep, though, was quality over quantity.
I agree.
Okay.
It is
Yeah.
quality over quantity.
Yeah. For you're happy to sort of spread the gospel about your dad and pay tribute to his legacy. But is there anything you've done that you're the most proud of? I mean, maybe the dog rescuer. Like, what's the thing that you think maybe either he would be the most proud of you for, or that you're the most proud of or happy with that you've done?
To be honest, I mean, I think the most rewarding thing I've ever done is this charity for animals, because I'm really I'm trying so hard to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his legacy. This is how I keep his name relevant. And I think he'd like that. That's why I named it the James Garner Animal Rescue Fund, JGARF. So I think he would think that was funny, and I think he would like it.
Yeah, I will tell you that there's no danger of anyone forgetting him, and his legacy will be forever just by the sheer number of people who bring up his works on this show alone. I know.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he comes up all the time.
Really? Oh, that's good.
And people you wouldn't suspect who loved Rockford Files, or people who worked with him. I had a DB Sweeney on a couple of weeks ago who was in Fire in the Sky with your dad, and had some great stories about golfing with him, and your dad absolutely destroying him in golf.
My dad was a great golfer.
Yeah, that's what.
But he also had a temper on the golf course, so you got to watch out. He's throwing his clubs, and you got to end up ducking a lot.
Yeah, DB said he completely destroyed him in golf, and he also got the impression that your dad wasn't even really trying that hard. He was taking it easy on him.
At one point, my dad was a scratch golfer, and he was pretty darn good. And my uncle, his brother, was a golf pro.
Oh, wow.
And so the two of them were double trouble on the golf course.
I mean, acting, golf pro, race car driving, like this is like the stuff of legend here. This is like,
well,
yeah. I mean, it's to your point, it's a legacy that I don't think would be possible to fade with all this stuff.
I'm so glad about that. I hope everybody keeps watching the Rockford Files and watching Maverick and watching his movies until the end of time. It's nice that he's eternally preserved like that. It's great.
Yeah, and in multiple sort of phases of his life as well, which is unusual, extra unusual. I mean, Maverick was a massive show that lasted for a long time, and most people that would have been it. Then he had a movie career, and then another hit TV series, and then another movie career.
Yep.
So it's like
a lot of the young people remember him from The Notebook.
Yes.
So if they're really young, and I say, "Do you know James Garner?" I'm like, "Who?" I'm like, "Did you see The Notebook?" They go, "Oh yeah." I go, "The old guy from The Notebook."
I mean, there are worse legacies to have than being the old guy from The Notebook.
Yeah, exactly. He would think that was funny too.
He did a lot of voiceover stuff too, didn't he? Do some cartoons and
he did.
Yeah,
he did. He did Atlantis.
Yep.
He was in Atlantis, and he did some other things. But yeah, he did. He was really good with voiceover, and he also did like voiceover commercials and things like for Chevy and things like that. He had a very identifiable voice, and it must be very difficult to dub him, especially in like other languages, because he had such a different kind of timbre. It's not like a John Wayne where it's very pronounced, thing, but he did have an identifiable voice.
It was sort of strong, but also easygoing at the same time. So it was like authoritative, but comforting.
Yeah.
which is sort of like the perfect thing to sell stuff.
Exactly. No wonder they liked them so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's ideal, really, for an advertising standpoint. What you have there.
Absolutely.
Did you ever go to any like premieres with him, or go to any of the awards or something like that?
Of course.
Any stand out?
I went. Yeah, probably the one that stands out the most is 1966 Grand Prix at the Cinerama Dome.
Oh, wow.
Because I think it was the first, like when they built it. I think they had just built it then. I could be wrong, but
it was around that time, yeah.
Surround sound and all this, and Grand Prix was very, advanced for its time. It had montage editing, and it was very loud, and it was really a neat experience. So that really does stand out in my mind as one of the great premieres that I went to.
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of the most larger than life Hollywood representation of a movie that you could possibly get.
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right.
I mean, the Cinerama.
I'm like obsessed with that movie too. I just saw it a couple years ago at the Directors Guild, and they had, it was really in, huge amount of, big sound and screen, and I don't know. I just love that movie. I don't know why. It's not the greatest like story I've ever seen, but just it was so advanced for its time. It actually saved the studio. The studio was getting ready to go under, and Grand Prix made like $9 million and kept it afloat.
Wow. I mean, it's some of those movies, it's probably not a movie you'd throw on TV or watch on your phone, and it wouldn't be that great. But if you see it the way it's meant to be seen in a theater,
I agree.
It's an experience. It's not just, watching a movie, which is a whole different thing. That's amazing. I'm very jealous of you getting to see that at the Cinerama Dome. Yeah, I think it opened in 63, so it would have been, you know what the first
63, yeah.
And I think the first movie ever there, and I might be wrong, is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. I think.
I think you're right.
I think they built it to show that, which is a epic, gigantic movie. So it's like, is there anyone
you're right.
Is there anyone that you ever met growing up in Hollywood, or that was friends with your dad, or anyone that you were starstruck by, or was everything kind of business as usual?
Nope.
No one, really, no one.
Nope.
Wow.
Nobody.
Wow.
No, because I didn't look at actors as stars. I just looked at them as people because my dad was that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
totally.
our next door neighbor was Steve McQueen.
Of course.
It didn't really, I just wasn't impressed for some reason. I know most normal people would be, but it just didn't register to me.
No, is this like you see Steve McQueen out mowing his lawn, or like you just kind of knew he lived there, or was he, No,
because I was friends with his daughter, and so I'd spend the night over there. And our parents were close friends, and, no, I spent a lot of time over there. But, I mean, he was just Carrie's dad,
right?
Or whatever. I didn't really, it didn't register.
And he and your dad didn't end up drag racing or anything in the neighborhood?
They did. Yes, they did. We lived on a private street, and it had speed bumps. And after they came back from Grand Prix, they both brought back Mini Coopers.
Of course.
And they would race on our street up and down all the time. And they would have more fun with those speed bumps than those Mini Coopers. It was hilarious to see. No, they had a blast. They were racing all the time.
I'd watch that movie. James Garner, Steve McQueen being neighbors and having Mini Cooper races in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
Sold, greenlit, in the room.
Crazy.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I won't take up your whole night, but I'm so happy that I got to talk to you. And as I said, your dad comes up on the show a lot, and his work comes up on the show a lot. So people were eager for me to talk to you, as I was eager to speak with you. So it's been a great great opportunity to do that. And we also get to promote the great charity that you're doing. So if you want to plug that again, and I'll mention it in the intro and outro, but it's a great cause.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure. It's been fun talking to you. My charity, if anybody wants to check it out, is JG, like James Garner, ARF.org. That's my charity, jgarf.org, the James Garner Animal Rescue Fund. And we do all kinds of things like educate people about spay and neuter, about animal abuse, and we rescue as many animals as we possibly can. But it does take a village. I do need, I can't do it alone. I do need support. So any little contribution would be greatly appreciated.
Excellent. And I'll put up links on tvguidancecounselor.com and with all the stuff when the episode posts as well. Well, thank you so much, and stay safe out there. I hope California becomes less apocalyptic, and the rest of the world as well. And we'll see.
Thank you so much.
There you go. Mini Cooper drag races with Steve McQueen in the neighborhood. That's what growing up there was like. So much like my my youth, where my dad, no, not at all. Not like my youth at all. But Gigi's great. And as I said, she has an amazing charity, jgarf.org, and you should go there and give them a couple bucks. Thank you so much if you're a patron of this show. If you want to not be a patron for a month and give whatever you give to me normally to her for the month, that would be very nice. Saving some dogs out there, or some other charity that you may like. I appreciate you giving me the money, but you could also not. If you want to give me money, you can do so at patreon.com/TV Guidance Counselor. I'm also at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com, or kennethwreed@gmail.com, which is my real email address that I just gave out instead of ken@icanread.com, but it doesn't really matter. You can figure it out. I mean, they're all real email addresses. You could get in hold of me pretty easily. Anyway, we'll be here next week for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
I know you're the TV guide guy. So is that why you're asking me?